And let me just say this to start. Today's no indication of how long a typical service will go. Joe is, I want to assure you of that, okay? Joe keeps it under 30 minutes. He's very consistent about it. I tend to preach a little longer, which is why I don't preach that often on the weekends, but this is not a typical length of service. The service average length time will be anywhere from an hour to about an hour 5 total. So, and that will be the average 45 to 50 times of the year, okay? Every once in a while Joe will forget and he'll go over, but most of the time that's not the typical length. So you don't have to worry about that, because if you're thinking, oh Lord, I can't do that, don't worry, you don't have to. All right, who's got a question? All right, let's vote. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, if you will raise your hand, I'm going to be bringing the microphone around so that everyone that's listening can hear this.
All right, I wasn't here last week, but I've got about 3 or 4 different questions that just general knowledge things. If this takes place, will we still have elders here?
You will. Well, no. Ultimately, hopefully you will, but it'll be one church with one group of elders, all of which currently reside in Ormond area and go to church at the Ormond campus. But as this model grows, our hope is to raise up elders on every campus that can be a part of the one church model, for sure. But initially, no. You'll have a group of elders. As a matter of fact, 2 of them are here right now. Tony, why don't you stand up? This is Tony Turner. Tony is one of our elders, and then Mike Boyle is one of our elders as well. And the great news about Plymouth Avenue, if this takes place, is unlike at Palm Bay, it's a much easier drive, right? So my guess is that some of them might even worship here with you periodically.
Okay. Now, as far as the music is concerned, now will we be seeing on the screen the music from there, or will we have our own music service? Yeah,
you'll have your own live worship here. The campuses will meet to coordinate to where the services are as close to being the same as possible, making exceptions for songs that certain campuses know and don't know. But yes, live worship will take place on this campus as well as it does in Palm Bay and at Ormond.
Okay. I thought of another one. I can't think of it right now.
Cord, if you would, since there is a new group of people here today, can you go through the basic introduction and the preamble that you did last week?
I don't remember what that was. Was it good? let's roll the tape. No, I'm just kidding.
Just give them an introduction to what service is going to be like, okay. What the future looks like.
You know, it's funny, when we did this at Palm Bay, and listen, before we did this at Palm Bay, I went to hours of conferences, listened to hours of podcasts, talked to executive pastors for hours to try to learn and to hear. And it's funny, the one thing that, one of the biggest questions that people have in this process is, what does the service look like? Because for some reason that becomes a very big sticking point, okay? So just to give you an idea, obviously we will try to engage the service the same way across all campuses. We're not trying to create Tomoka Christian Church Ormond campus in the land, okay? We're going to create one organization with one mission statement, with one leadership, and with one model. But there's also going to be flexibility in how this campus would be able to play it out depending on who's leading and how that works, okay? We want ministry contextualized to this environment, because DeLand is different than Ormond, and DeLand and Ormond are much different than Palm Bay. So there has to be some contextualization there. But the basic format is, we'll go to one service here, all right? We'll have one service. And that service will more than likely take place at 10:30. And the reason for that is because we have a system designed to live stream our 9:30 service from our Ormond campus into our campuses on Sunday morning. Okay? It basically backs up our live service to where we can stream our live service, the preaching part of it, here and at Palm Bay at the same time. If we had a 9:30 service, we couldn't do that. Okay? And since we meet at 9:30 and 11:30, more than likely 10:30 would be the service time, because that's what Palm Bay does. It allows us the flexibility to back that live stream up, okay, and have all one service. Okay? Service will be different every week. We won't have the same order every week. We don't want to get into, 3 songs, preaching. It's going to change. There's going to be some Sundays we're going to do preaching up front. There's going to be some Sundays we're going to do preaching at the end. There's going to be times where communion's going to be at the end. There's going to be all different things that go on during the service. Each service is planned according to the preaching and the scripture and the topic that we're working on that week. Okay? And so you won't have a consistent model of how that goes. Obviously there's going to be worship. The worship is contemporary. It's designed to be contemporary. I can tell you, as I told, I think, a group here before, what we consider to be temporary today is about to expire, because the 30 and 35-year-olds have a whole different concept of contemporary. And so us folk who are older, that brought in contemporary, are going to have the same struggle that the people who gave up the organ and the piano had when we brought contemporary in. And we're going to see whether or not we practice what we preach. Because I can tell you, having a 35-year-old son, wasn't raised on big hair bands and lots of musicians and smoke. He was not raised on that. The music my 35-year-old son likes is much, much, much different. And so do most of those in that generation. And so currently, one service, it's going to be contemporary, it's going to be different every week. Like I said, it'll go an hour to an hour and 5 minutes. We won't do a offering meditation. We will do a communion meditation sometimes. We take offering and communion every week. We're just not going to make it the focal point of the service by giving it that time. We want to give that to worship and to preaching. There'll be introductions of missionaries and prayers for mission teams. That'll be a part of what we do each week. Joe preaches 40 weeks of the year. The other 12 we divided among myself and a couple other pastors that will preach. Our campus pastors will preach live in our Ormond campus some. Joe will preach live here some weeks. On that week, the service will be videoed into the campus at Ormond at Palm Bay. And so it won't be consistent. The thing you can count on it being consistent is God's word's going to be preached. We're going to worship. We're going to clap and cheer. We're going to observe communion. We're going to give offering. And we're going to be out of there probably within an hour and 5 minutes. Because in our mind, that service is designed to worship God. It's also designed to be a place for you to bring people and introduce them into an easy on-ramp to God. But the large majority of what the church does is the other 6 days of the week. Okay? And you'll see that happening on your campus shortly thereafter.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. A question that came up in the congregation last week that wasn't voiced was, okay, so we're going to have live worship here.
Yep.
But where are the worship team members coming from? Are they coming from Ormond, or are they going to be, drawn out of the congregation here?
Well, the goal is to have them all drawn from this campus. But as we have done at Palm Bay we have some of our musicians rotate if they need to, because smaller the group, the more difficult it is to find volunteers. When you find someone, they generally have to serve 52 weeks of the year, and that's exhausting. And so we have enough musicians and singers at the Ormond campus that we want those people to be able to take some weeks off. So the large majority of your team, all of your ministry teams, all of your service teams, we want them raised up from here, right? Because this is your community. This is your campus, okay? Well, Michael, Billy, and Ben will all be interviewed as potential employees. They'll have the first opportunity to interview with our team. Absolutely. I mean, they've earned the right to be interviewed in that process. And listen, part of this process that you all are going through, we want them to go through, because they may go through this process and go, we don't want to work there, right? We want to give them an opportunity to say where they're at in that process. But the merger doesn't signify they get to keep their job or they immediately lose their job. Either way, they're going to get to be interviewed. So,
A little backtracking on where we were in the process of revitalizing our congregation. We had gone through the process of analysis and evaluating where we are, what we need to do to move forward. A lot of that involved the staff. Most of you know we've been operating overstaffed for the last 5 years. That's a lot of our issue, is that we haven't been able to pay enough staff to do the things we need to do. And to bring in a new minister, after Adam resigned, that left us in a place where we really could not find the person that everyone wanted here and that we needed to move us forward without releasing some of the staff we had. Without this option, they're still in danger of losing their positions. For us to go out and find the leader of this church that we need, we would have to cut them either part-time, completely. So that whole concern doesn't go away, no matter which option or which path we follow.
I have concerns. I've been in this area for 45 plus years. I've worked for land management with the county. I've watched and been with Mrs. Jacobs to city management meetings over the property. My concern is what happens to this property if we go with you, and what happens if it fails in 2 years, and what happens to the property if we choose not to and we close our doors?
well, I can answer the question, what happens if it goes through. What you're going to vote on, according to your bylaws, is the transfer of that property to Tomoka Christian Church Incorporated. So that property would become part of that corporation's property. So the deed would transfer, those kinds of things would transfer. Basically, what would happen is this 501c3 Plymouth Avenue Christian Church Incorporated would cease to exist on the roll calls of the state of Florida. The property then would be and its assets transferred to Tomoka Christian Church in its entirety. What happens if it fails in 2 years? Well, I can tell you that has never crossed my mind, because if it fails, just to answer the question and to play this out, if it fails according to our bylaws, every piece of property and asset that belongs to Tomoka Christian Church can only be given to another nonprofit. Okay, so it would fall into the hands of another nonprofit that would be designated by our leadership. But it would take something catastrophic for that to take place. Now, what happens to the property if this merger doesn't go through? My guess is it remains Plymouth Avenue Christian Churches.
Our bylaws read the same thing. If we were to close the doors in 2 years, or if we were to decide to try to sell, we can only donate to another 501c3. What they do with it, we have no control over. So if we were to give it to another church who couldn't make it, I have no idea what their bylaws would read. That would probably be part of our investigation as to who we would want to give it to. We definitely don't want to see the opportunities of this property go to a gas station or a Quick Mart or something like that. The opportunities of this property are tremendous with the high school across the street, with the crossroads that we have here. There's only one purpose in my mind for this property, and that's God's purpose.
And I'll assure all of you that our bylaws are designed that no individual would ever own what Tomoka owns. It would only go to another nonprofit. So if this merger would go through and the property would be transferred, there's no chance that property would ever go to a private individual other than a nonprofit. Okay.
In other words...
Tell me your name.
Carol.
Hi, Carol.
In other words, we're going to hand over our campus.
That's
No money exchanged.
absolutely, because whatever money would exchange would be
Okay, then
one church's money.
what about our educational scholarship funds?
That scholarship fund remains the same, but just transfer the name under which it exists at CFR, but the rules and regulations that regulate that scholarship fund would remain unchanged. It would serve its same purpose, just under a different organization's name.
Another question, what about our missions that we help support?
Those will be evaluated, but all the missions that Tomoka Christian Church supports through all of our campuses will become our missions. And my guess is, I haven't seen your list yet, but my guess is we support some of the same people, okay? But we would evaluate all of those in light of our mission program. So we did the same thing with Palm Bay Christian Church as well. I can tell you that we support missionaries, church planters in every country in the world currently, in 26 states of the United States. So it'll be tough for me to believe that we probably won't have some of the same ones.
There's a possibility that we will pick up more local missions. I mean, we watch a lot of the missions go overseas, different countries, and that's great, but I would also like to see more in our own community, in our own area. What is the possibility of that?
Well, I'm hoping it's great. We certainly believe that the gospel should start in Jerusalem. And so I think for I know that our leadership believes that for any church to be successful, it has to be successful first in its own community, which is why we support, which is why we have a thrift store, which is why we have a food pantry, which is why we support Halifax Urban Ministries. It's why we support Resources for Women. It's why we work with the homeless in our community. It's why we participate in Right to Life with those groups. We absolutely believe that local missions have to be as strong as our global missions, for sure. But we also believe that the only hope that the world truly has is the church. And so we want to be investing your money, our money, in making sure that the gospel is being presented. Listen, there's enough social justice ministries in the world at times. We don't want to be just another one of those. Wherever we go, we want the gospel spread as well. So absolutely, I hope there's a chance for us. I don't know what we support locally yet. I expect to get that list this week and go through it, but I absolutely want to support local missions. 100%. We have a group in our campus called Community Compassion, because what we found out is, much like you said, the idea is that the church goes all over the world, right? We'll go to India and Guatemala and China, but we won't go to Volusia County, right? Or we won't go to Seffner, the children's home at Seffner. So we developed a group called Community Compassion, and basically they're one-day mission trips. And so you may not be able to take a week off from work. You may not be able to raise $2,000 to travel across the globe, but you can take one day off. And so we have lots of community compassion projects that go up to Jacksonville and work with the homeless. We go to Seffner and spend the day. We have a church that we work with in Tampa. We have a multitude of those opportunities to do those kinds of things, okay? Somebody else had their hand up, I think.
Well,
right here. Who's got the mic?
Mine's just I just figured that if we're given to, who we give to, and say one maybe slips through the cracks or something, maybe that information could be provided to us if we want to, out of our own pockets, to donate to that mission or whatever it happens to be. We didn't have to let it go away. If maybe the church doesn't support it, we ourselves could do so on our own. That's just all. Thank you.
What's your name? Rachel, thank you.
Hang on, Hal.
Well, we're recording it.
We're recording it.
Oh, you're recording.
Hey, we got to have evidence of this, right?
Okay.
So we're sitting around the coffee shop debating who said what. We'll know, right?
Yeah. Okay, my name is Hal.
Hal?
H-A-L.
Okay. Thanks, Hal.
A lot of people leave the H off. Question is totally different. Relative to the age of this campus, in the transfer, should it happen, are there Volusia County code issues?
You mean on the building and the property?
On the building, yes.
We'll figure all of that out here in the next few weeks. I can't answer that question intelligently, but we'll make sure that we are up to code.
That's kind of a leading question now.
It is.
Yeah, I know, and that's okay. I can assure you that as we move through this process and before we launch, if this merger goes through and this becomes Tomoka Christian Church DeLand campus, I can assure you that when we open our doors for our first service, we'll be up to code.
And who heads that up? Your
Yeah,
shop?
yeah. We've got a team that will handle that. We have a facilities director, and we have a group of people that will help us determine that. Everybody likes leading questions because they always want to know what the answer is going to be, right?
I have 2 questions. When's the vote?
We haven't decided yet. So that'll be in accordance with both your bylaws and our bylaws after we go through this 4-week process, because we still have to do our vetting on our end. And so we don't have a date set for that.
So do you think it'll be mid?
Anticipated vote for here is 2 weeks after Joe preaches, so another 4 weeks.
And my anticipation is we'll talk them out of that, and we'll push that back just a little bit, because it may take us a little longer to come up with our assessment of things like code issues, because the one thing we have to do is we have to assess and come up with a budget for a year, which will include any physical improvements, the cost of full staff, all of those things. So we have to come up with a budget to present to our leadership team to make sure that financially we're in shape to be able to do that. And that may take longer than just the 2 weeks after Joe's done. And so, but we can't give you a date just yet. I will tell you that it will happen this year. Okay, and probably before the Florida Gators win a game, I would guess. That would be my guess. I'm just kidding.
The summit.
Is this a Florida State church or Florida Gator?
Florida State.
Florida State, right? Okay. Roll Tide, is that what you said? Oh, man. Tomoka's out. We don't support Roll Tide. No, I'm just kidding.
How different, my last question is, how different is the music? Like, is it similar songs to what we're doing now, similar style, or is it completely different than what we're used to?
Honestly, the form and the fashion are the same. Well, it depends. If you're talking about Ormond campus, it takes everything you've got and multiplies it by 100. The stage is 10 times the size, and there's lights and smoke, and it's black in the room, and it's bass and guitar and 5 singers and drums. It takes everything you got and multiplies it by 100. Palm Bay's campus is much like what you have here, right? Maybe a little bit more Tomoka-ized, but it's basically the same thing. And so basically there will be some tweaks to what goes on here. The volume will probably increase, and some of you are going to go, the volume's too loud, right? And we're going to encourage you to watch it in the lobby on a TV or serve in our parking ministry. That way, by the time the worship's over, you can come in and listen to the preaching. So, because we're going to have it at a certain volume, and not everybody's going to like it, and we're going to just move on. So, but yes, same songs. Like that song you sang today, the one right before I preached, Grace, For Your Grace, or what's it called? Grace Finds Me. That's a song we'd sing, 100%. What an awesome song, right? That's just a gorgeous song. Some of the songs that you sing may be a little further back in the contemporary catalog, and we sing some of those too, right? But it's much the same with a few tweaks, okay? That what cross? Well, that's probably, first of all, I apologize for that saying. It's probably a terrible saying, but you know, it's like if you go to McDonald's in DeLand and then you drive to McDonald's in Ormond, you know it's McDonald's, right? we'll do much the same way in certain things in the church, right? So if you go to the the Ormond campus and then you make the trip to the Palm Bay campus, you're going to see much of the same similarities. You're going to see the same colors. You're going to see the same signage. You're going to see the same posters. You're going to see the same names of ministries, those kind of things. You can. If that matters to you, we'll build that cross just for you, right? And we'll make sure it's up to code, because that, right? But you know, we'll change the decor a little bit, but I mean, there's been times I've been at Palm Bay, our campus, and I'll go down there like at 10 o'clock at night because I'm dropping something off, and I'll just walk through the building, and honestly, I'm just amazed at how much it feels like our Ormond campus, because the racks in our halls will be the same as the racks at Palm Bay, and the announcement. It's amazing to me how well our team did at that. I was just blown away. Well, hopefully, eventually, that would be awesome, because if we're going to take mission trips, we've got to help you raise money somehow, right? So, lots of opportunities, right? But you can also go to Palm Bay and know that it's Palm Bay. They haven't lost that feel. Right? I mean, there is no doubt when you worship at Palm Bay, you're worshiping at Tomoka, but there's no doubt you're doing it in Palm Bay. And that's what we want here. We want that balance to be the same for both campuses. Tell me your name.
Donna Albin, hey.
You have a nice little convertible when you drove in today, too. I was a little jealous, so.
It does not suck. It's nice. Thank you.
What'd she say? It does not. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Now you may forget what I wanted to say. No, I noticed, or I think I noticed, your title was maybe executive pastor. Is that what I saw? I wasn't here last week, I'm sorry, and I have a favorable opinion about what's going on, by the way. Does that make you maybe the administrative head of the board? Is that really what that means? So
the way our organization is structured is that we are a staff-led but elder-protected organization. So in lots of small churches, the elders are responsible for everything. They're responsible for managing the staff, and they're responsible. We're way too big for that. These 5 men have jobs and they have careers, and so their job as elders is to make sure that we stay on point with our mission. And they have one employee in their trust, and that's the senior pastor. Okay? So Joe answers to the elders. I am Joe's second in command. I answer to him. And so my job as the executive pastor is I'm the one that's in charge of our entire staff. Okay? So the staff all answers at some level up to their supervisors who ultimately answer up to me. Okay? And so my primary responsibility with this organization is to administrate the mission of our church and to make sure our team is working toward that same goal. That's my primary job as the executive pastor. The executive part. The pastor part is I'm a pastor. I preach and I teach and I counsel and I visit and I encourage, and I get to do all the pastoral stuff too, but I get to do all the other stuff that I love to do in management and administration. But I'm not the executive lead of the board. The elders are a separate entity who oversee our mission, and Joe answers to them, and then organizationally I answer to Joe and everybody else up that way.
Did I hear you say 5 elders?
5 elders, yes.
Wow, that's a remarkable thing that you have 5 elders to run this big show. I mean,
well, the reason why we have 5 is because they don't have to run it, right? They're there to focus on one task, and that's to make sure that Joe doesn't drive the train into the ditch, okay? That he's not up there preaching heresy and going, I mean, that's what they do. And listen, you know, the 2 of them are sitting here, and I'm totally comfortable saying this. It is a challenge at times for men who are as capable and as competent as they are to allow enough freedom for our staff to do that. It's a challenge, but it's the only way to make an organization our size work, is for them to stay focused on their role, and they do a phenomenal job. And I know there are times they go home and go, oh, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I know that. I've been in the rooms. I know it's got to be hard, but they also see all the amazing things that God does, and they're incredibly supportive. So we want 5, because we don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, because how are you going to please everybody, right? It's not possible to please all 5 of them. But through their faith and through their maturity in Christ, they're willing to agree. And we don't vote on anything. The elders don't ever vote. They agree. They either agree or we don't move forward. There's an agreement in process, and it's not a matter of we voted and, hey, you lost 3-2. Nope, we're not doing that. If it's divided in opinion, then we're pretty much going to move on. Now, you can disagree, like having a differing opinion in that room, but they can still agree to move forward. And I love that about those men. They do a phenomenal job.
One of the things about having that type of leadership is the elders are called to shepherd. We have not been able to shepherd. We've been mired in the day-to-day operations of what goes on around here and can't get out of it. So a model like that allows the elders to go out. We get a lot of comments about, I don't even know who the elders are. Well, we haven't been able to go and meet with everybody. We haven't been able to do that face-to-face contact and to visit people in the hospital and visit people at home, to go to our shut-ins. Those are the things that really, really take a toll on the leadership here. And obviously it's taken a toll on the direction of the church. I believe that's why we are dwindling, is because we do not have that relationship with our congregation.
And we believe the same thing. Elders are not paid staff. They're shepherds of the flock. And so their responsibilities are totally different. And listen, for 20-some years I worked outside of the church, and so I get the church is a bizarre dynamic. We have this spiritual entity that's supposed to do this spiritual purpose, and yet we are also a licensed organization in the state of Florida, which means we've got to follow rules and regulations, and we have employees, right? So there's two complete sides of this. There is the business side, which we don't want the elders micromanaging. That's not what their job is. They're elected to shepherd the flock. That word shepherd has nothing to do with running a business. It has everything to do with taking care of sheep. But we can't run the business side without having some investment in the elders to know we're not being irresponsible with the resources and the truth of God's word. And so it is a very delicate balance, and these guys do a phenomenal job. They do. And I know there are times it takes every bit of spiritual maturity they have to go home and to be comfortable with where a decision lies. Fair enough? Right? Fair enough. But they do a phenomenal job. So we have a very big staff in my mind. We have 56 employees currently across 2 campuses and a preschool. So when we're an employee or an employer, we have all those problems and issues, and thankfully I've got lots of years experience dealing with it, and so I handle a large majority of that and my team. But yeah, it's a difficult thing. So we want our elders to shepherd, and they do. And just so you know, our elders are not representatives. They're not an elected member of the House of Representatives. So what happens in lots of churches is the elder's job is to be representative of your complaints. Then they go to the elders meeting and they say, hey, guess what? So-and-so's got a complaint. We need to address that. Nope. That's not the role of the elders. The elders are to shepherd the flock, which means you can go to them and complain. Our hope is that they will shepherd you through that process. Now, if they're in their wisdom say, hey, this is legitimate, we need to deal with it, then they come and talk about it. But generally not at the elders meeting, generally one-on-one first to try to solve the problem, because that's generally all it needs. But we don't need to hijack an elders meeting for one complaint from 4 people in a 3,500 person organization. So generally the elders will say, hey, I'll go talk to, and they know the right person, and they go have that conversation. End of story, we move on, right? Because the elders meeting's far more directional, purposeful conversation than to do that. And so our elders we don't announce them to the church so everybody knows to run to them and complain, because they're going to run to the elders meeting and complain. We don't want our elders doing that. We want our elders leading people in the spiritual maturity, not trying to run an organization. We're not doing it, right? We don't have suggestion boxes. We don't put them up because we don't want your suggestions. Not because we don't care. We want you serving. We want you in the food pantry. We want you in the thrift store. We want you in Bible study. We want you in the children's ministry. Listen, if you want to help run the organization, we encourage you to fill an application. We'll put you through the interview process, right? All of those people have the ability to do that. Listen, I've spent 11 years running restaurants, and here's what I told. The customer's always right? That is the second dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because if you've ever worked in retail, here's what you know. Customers are hardly ever right, okay? They are ridiculous in their expectations, right? So here's what we believe. We believe that all of us are never always right, but there are leaders assigned to make decisions, and we're going to trust those leaders. That's what we're going to do. And we're not voting. Church at Tomoka does not vote. Now, when we do this merger, we'll vote because we're required by our bylaws to do so. But we don't bring anything to the congregation to vote on. It's not a democracy. We want it to be led by our elders and by our staff, and we're going to push forward those opportunities for you. And like I said, if you're interested in being part of that, put your name on the list to be vetted as an elder or apply for a job in our organization. Otherwise, our expectation is we're going to make it hard for people to go to hell, and you're going to help plow your fields and sow your seeds, and we're going to make it possible for you to do that. Okay? Hal, you got another question?
Yeah, I'm still Hal.
Okay.
I come from an engineering background, and what I'm hearing is a lot of words.
Mm-hmm.
In our, it was configuration management at General Electric, a lot of stuff. Anyhow, I'm very familiar with flowcharts. Do you have a flowchart listing all these people and requirements? I've asked for one here years ago, never saw one.
Are you interested in an organizational chart for our staff? Is that what you're asking for?
Yep.
We certainly have one of those. Be more than glad to let you see it.
Not just me, but anybody might answer a lot of questions for people to know who and what.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
It already exists.
Yes, and on our webpage, we list all of our employees and what they do, but we also have an organizational chart. In 8 years, that organizational chart's probably changed 14 times.
Sure.
Right? We have several flow charts for processes and decisions in an organization that big we have to have, but we certainly do have an organizational chart. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm Ginger.
Hi, Ginger. Are you with Hal?
Pardon?
Are you with Hal?
Yes, I am.
Most of the time, okay.
Do you have a good financial program? We've never been able to really handle finances here.
We do. We have a licensed CPA, a 20-some-year licensed CPA as our finance director. She does a phenomenal job. She's finishing her first year with us. She's worked in finances and audits for nonprofits and churches for 20-some years. She does a great job, and we've been blessed with lots of good finance directors. The biggest challenge at Tomoka is Joe wants to spend all the money because there are children that need to be fed, widows that need to be taken care of, churches that need to be planted. And the one thing the elders have seen, and every one of us has seen, is that when you do what God wants you to do, He blesses that. And so, but yes, we do have a good financial program and a good financial director, absolutely.
I'm Lisa.
Hi.
Chet has alluded to the fact that we're understaffed. You've spoken several times about staff, and if you want to apply, do you anticipate increasing the staff here if this goes through? Would that be through new employees or bringing employees over from Tomoka?
So what we would do, the way we would certainly come into a campus is we would hire a full-time campus pastor. And for those of you that might be unfamiliar with the term, campus pastor is the same thing as your lead pastor if you were an independent church. The only difference is he won't be the primary communicator on Sunday morning. But everything else he'll do. His job is to lead in the mission of the church on this campus and raise up leaders. So a full-time campus pastor. We'll have worship. Okay. We'll also have administration in the office. We won't have a church secretary. We have an administrative assistant. And their responsibility will be the admin assistant to the campus pastor, and we'll raise up volunteers who'll help answer phones at our church. But we won't have a church secretary. Church doesn't need a secretary. Our campus pastor needs an administrative assistant. Okay? So we'll have that. We'll also have a children's director or children's pastor to do that, and then we'll also have a facilities person as well. And so that's generally what we would bring in when we came to a campus to start to make sure those things are covered. And we also, at some level, cover youth, and we've only done this one time, right? So the responsibility at Palm Bay as our worship person also has a ministry background, and so he oversees the development of our youth ministry down there, and he's now recruited and is training a volunteer and his wife to run it right now. So yeah, there'll probably be an increase in staff for sure.
My name's Chris. I quite honestly have more questions than people in the room have time today, so I'll stick to the first one that came up. You talked earlier about there will be no elders on campus. Is it same thing for no deacons on campus as well?
We don't use the word deacon. We use the word ministry leader. We changed that several years ago. The word deacon is from the Greek word diakonos, which means to serve or ministry. And so we simply changed the name from deacon to ministry leader because that's their role. We don't believe the deacon has any necessity of being a part of running the church. We believe that the deacons should be ministry leaders, making sure the church stays on mission. So that's what we call it.
Okay, regardless of what you call them, there won't be any on campus?
Oh, my guess is that Chet and Jeff and Jamie and Kenny and many of you will be ministry leaders. Whoever leads a ministry is going to be a ministry leader. And I'm hoping there's a multitude of those on campus.
Okay, because I was concerned when you said no elders, because as you preached about earlier today, talking about how life happens. If life happens at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night and I need somebody from the church and there's no elders, my concern was who in the world do I call? I'm certainly not going to call people in Ormond Beach that I don't have a personal relationship with.
My hope is that you'll call the campus pastor.
Provided that he's available. The first person that I would reach out to is the deacon or the elder that I'm closest to.
And we would hope you would do the same here. The ministry leaders that are here, my hope is that you would start with them.
Explain their role, please.
Their role is to do exactly what the Bible taught the deacons are supposed to do, which is to serve, to lead ministries. Nowhere in Scripture does a deacon run an organization. They lead ministries. So that's their role. So if you, for example, we have a ministry of our food pantry. Gene McCullough is our ministry leader there. And so what he does is he recruits, he trains and develops his volunteer team to run that ministry. He's a deacon in the sense that he's running ministry and serving. And we have probably close to 100 of those on the Ormond campus and probably close to 20 of those down on our Palm Bay campus right now. And our hope is that our small group leaders are ministry leaders, right? And so we have a lady in our group who is currently going through bone cancer. She doesn't call Joe, she calls our group. And so our group is the one that goes to the hospital, it goes to her home, and that's our hope. That's what we would want in those situations for sure. I didn't connect you two together until I saw her sitting there with her arm around you, so. Yeah, sorry.
That might be a curse for him. My name's Vanessa, and I just have a concern with whether those 5 elders will spend any time on our campus, so we get to know them as well.
My guess is that they will. They've spent some time on the Palm Bay campus for sure. And listen, it's one of the challenges. It's one of the challenges of the multi-site model, right? I mean, when you go through the process of figuring out how to do it, you realize pretty quickly one of the challenges is that you take a group like Tomoka and you make it one church in multiple cities. You've got an immediate challenge of if all the elders are on one campus, you do have a little bit of a void there, right? And so we recognize that that's not a perfect system, which is why we want to, as quickly as possible, develop elders on our campuses that fit Tomoka's DNA and leadership model. Absolutely, very much so. So it is a little bit, it's a concern for us too, right? From an organizational standpoint, it's not a concern to me at all because the organization is run by employees, so that doesn't worry me. But from a spiritual shepherding perspective, it's a big jump at times, right? And so we do want to develop those ministry leaders. We want to develop the people that you can call, because in a church of 4,000 people, the pastor can't be at the hospital all the time, right? Or can't be at everybody's home. So there's got to be other people that we can call, and we want those ministry leaders, those mission trip leaders, those community group leaders to be those people in that situation.
It's Carol again. I know we've sort of skirted my question.
Which is?
Which is, we are like a small fish in a big pond, as I see it, being your campus, Tomoka's campus. Now, you don't know us. We do not know you. We have our needs. Now, are you going to have someone from our congregation as a leadership, in a leadership role, to take our needs and our desires and our wants to the big boss, beside God?
Well, listen, if you have a spiritual need, and I'm assuming you're not talking about that. I'm assuming you're talking about organizational desires and wants, right? Or personal, right? Well, first of all, I'll just address the personal. My desire is, if you have a personal need, that's what our campus pastor and his team are here for. Absolutely. Well, of course you will. He's going to live and breathe here. Yeah. I mean, listen, he will exist on this campus as your pastor, right? Our lead pastor, our senior pastor is Joe over the organization. But you're going to have a full-time pastor here who's going to be in that office 5 days a week, who's going to be on this campus every weekend, right? You're not going to be without a pastor, and you're going to know who they are. I mean, it very well could be Ben. I don't know where he's sitting at, but, it could very well be Ben. If we go through the interview process, all agree that that's the right fit, it could very well be Ben, and you know him very well, right? So on a personal level, absolutely. But just to be 100% honest with you in this process, if it's an organizational need and want, you can come and talk to your campus pastor, but our desire is for him to deal with that, and if he believes it's a necessary request, then he'll come and conversate with me. But 90% of what people want and desire in the church, we're probably going to pass on, just because anybody who could run it could have a different need and want. We just simply have a group of people that know what they want and know what we think we should be about, and we stay very focused on that. And I would never try to sell any of you on the fact that Tomoka's a church for everybody, because it's just not. Just like the Baptist church on that road that we ascertained is probably not for everybody, right? So, but you'll have a full-time campus pastor that you can call and talk to him for sure. Absolutely. And my hope is you'll know them, right? If not initially, eventually, right? I mean, Ben's been here. How long's Ben been here?
6 months.
6 months. And how many of you feel like you know Ben? Right? It doesn't take long, right? It doesn't take long at all. And he's an interim. And he's an interim who also has another job, right? But if you get a full-time guy and this is their only job, it will take you less than 3 months to get to feel like you know that person, okay? So, and to go to your big fish in a little pond analogy, listen, we're all just small fishes in God's big pond, right? We would never ever want you to feel like you're a small fish in our organization's big pond, because we just don't feel that way about ourselves. I mean, Tomoka has 3,500 people, okay? It's a pretty big church. But man, I've got friends that are pastors of churches of 30,000, 40,000. I mean, I go to conferences with executive pastors that are my good friends, and they're running 18,000 on the weekend. I mean, we're a tiny fish in a really big pond, okay? There are so many churches bigger than ours. It's just, if we compare ourselves to a 100-person church, yeah, we could say we're a big fish, but that's not the goal. The goal is to get as many people here to heaven as we possibly can, right? And we're going to do everything we can to make that possible.
One thing that we've kind of stressed in this whole process is The things like, do we have the right flowers on the piano? Those things we got to get rid of. We need to be focused on what we are doing to bring people in, what we are doing to reach out to the young kids in the community. Down the road, we're looking at tremendous changes. We have to, the new generation, they call it Generation Z, because if you don't get their attention and if you don't get the message to them in 8 seconds, you've lost them. So, that's what we have to look at. We have to look at the kids that are running around with their pants down. How are we going to reach that kid? How are we going to reach the kid that is constantly on his cell phone? Well, he doesn't have a belt, so yeah.
Ben, that's not helping. No wonder you guys like him.
So the things about our wants and our needs, if those are brought to the leadership, I hope and I pray that you have thought about, is this necessary to reach out somebody? Is this necessary to get that person to know Christ?
And the good news is, if this transition takes place, Kenny and Chet and Jeff and Jamie, hopefully they'll all be here too. They'll just have a different title, and yet some of the same responsibilities. So that group will stay intact. So that part will be very, very familiar. And listen, we have 3 wonderful men at Palm Bay that were elders for 20 plus years. They still serve down there, and people still treat them like shepherds. We're not going to do anything but encourage that. And those men don't care about their title, neither do we. We just know organizationally we have 5, but those people function incredibly well as shepherds down there. And I expect these guys will do the exact same thing, right? And listen, some of those things he's talking about, we're dealing with them too. I mean, we've got to change. Our church isn't designed to reach the 15-year-old yet. We got to make some serious changes on how we do that. And listen, I will tell you this, that one of the biggest challenges in a big church, even if this was a small campus, is the balance between making it feel comfortable and yet being organizationally efficient to accommodate a lot of people, right? So for example, this is just dumb stuff, but for example, so last week, I think when I was preaching, I said to Michael while I was talking, hey Michael, you can bring your team up, right? We don't do that at Tomoka. Because, and this is the stuff some people love and some people hate, because in our model, that's inefficient. Instead of me wasting time to get Michael up during the service and being distracted, they simply know, because we have a stage manager, that when Court goes to pray, they're immediately upstage and there's no loss of time, because we want to get as much content in an hour and 5 minutes as we possibly can, right? And so some of the things that we do in a smaller church, we'll eliminate. And some of you will go, it just feels like a big church. It doesn't feel like family anymore. And you know what? You're probably going to be right. It will feel less that way in here. But if that sacrifice leads to the number of people in this church doubling, the question is it worth it? I mean, that's really the only question. And listen, we all have those things. I mean, I grew up, Carmen, my wife, was telling me that being in this church reminds us of the church back home that I actually came to faith in, the Latona Church of Christ. Feels just very much like it. And there is just something warm and hugging about that environment. I mean, I love it. But that church never got past 150 people because they cared about what flower was on the organ. That's just the honest truth. That's the kind of stuff they cared about. We really care about the person who's going to die today in Volusia County and has to answer the question, do you know Jesus? I mean, that's what we really care about. And listen, we all struggle with what to give up for that, man. I mean, we just do. And so it's not always going to be easy for all of us. And Tomoka's going, listen, we've got some changes on our campus we got to figure out. So hopefully we can learn to do it together. And maybe we'll have a ministry of money we collect for belts. I don't know. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll start that. Ben's Belt Ministry.
Here I go again. This is Penny.
Hi, Penny.
You mentioned several times the goal. I think we need to get to the spiritual part as opposed to the human nature of people wanting certain things. The goal is building the kingdom. The land, the property, people have made comments, well, why don't we sell part of it and build up on the church? That property was donated by Mrs. Jacobs to build God's kingdom. And selling it is only putting a Band-Aid on our situation in this church. The goal, I know I'm not going to like everything you do. I didn't like everything that God did because I didn't agree with him. But it's his will. It's not our will. And when I get to fussing about the fact that God didn't answer my prayer the way I wanted it to, I have to say, uh-oh, it wasn't my will. Let me accept that which I can accept. Let me go on and know the difference. And Lord, you're the one that's going to be in control. And we need to be spiritual enough to pray to God that he is sending this boat to save this church, to keep the doors open, to meet the goal of building his kingdom. That's all I have to say.
You know, when you give that speech, you should just stand up and drop the microphone and walk out, you know. Listen, you know, I just want to say the same thing I said to Palm Bay to you. Listen, you get to decide. There ain't no pressure from me. I mean, I'm going to be as 100% honest with you about what Tomoka's like and what we do as possible. You guys get to vote. And I have, I'll be honest with you, have no ownership over that decision. None. I'm totally at peace with whatever you decide. So is our team. And I want you to be at peace with that. This isn't about taking over a property or a building or land, because we don't own any of that stuff anyway. I'm just presenting the option that the elders communicated to us that we've been praying for years on our campus. God somehow brought these two things together in this season and this time. If it works to where we merge, man, I'm excited. If it works to where we don't, man, I'm excited, right? But at the end of the day, we're going to keep doing what we do, and we're going to move forward. I take a great deal of ownership in the answers that I give, very little ownership, almost none of the outcome, because it's your decision. You get to pray about it, you get to vote about it, and hopefully at the end of the day, we'll all come to an agreement that we did what God wanted us to do. That's really the only thing that matters. Oh, man. Go, I'm done. I saw you come out of the corner of my eye. I didn't know if you were coming up to end this thing or what. I didn't know.
No. I'm going to say one thing. I am going to go because I'm getting in trouble because it's our anniversary today, and so my wife has been
happy anniversary. How many years?
18.
Happy anniversary.
So she just left. But anyways, if as you guys know, we've been struggling as far as the work. And if you haven't noticed, most every weekend or any time you come here, it's basically one of us that's doing a lot of the work. But the idea is, don't base your decision on the elders, whether or not we're going to be here, whether we're not going to be here. We all plan on being here. I mean, everything that I know of, nobody's told me anything different. But it's not about the elders, and it's not about the staff. We went in and we actually worked and sat down for weeks that y'all didn't know about with the elders and the staff. Everybody knows what this potentially might mean. It might be to them or might mean to us, but don't base it on what happens to us. You know, God loves us all. So whether or not I'm part of this church or I'm part of a church over there, God loves us. It's the same thing when I look at that school over there. I don't know how many of y'all graduated there. I did. Okay? That ain't the same school I went to. But you know what? I'm still a Bulldog. It's the same thing. Even if this church wasn't here, us here, we're still Plymouth Avenue Christian Church. Now, we may attend Tomoka and will become Tomoka, but there will always be a time where everybody has went to a different church. That was your home church. You're still that person. It's still your church. It's still there. But the main reason is because God's still there. God will always be. So base your decision not on personal wants, but on what God wants us to do. And it is in the Word. So thank y'all. And I'm going to ease myself out of trouble.
Hey, don't settle for good today. That's the enemy of great, okay? So all right. Listen, well, I mean, we could, as Chris, right, said, we could probably be here some more. We'll be back again next Sunday to answer more of your questions, and then Joe will be here the week after that, and then we'll be in communication with your elders, with our elders and leadership team to present when a vote can take place. And so I can't thank you enough for, listen, I want you to be honest in your questions. Uncomfortable situations don't bother me. And I want you to be honest about what your questions are in the process. And I promise I'll be honest about the answers. But we want to continue to pray for you guys as you go through this, and ask you to pray for the elders at Tomoka and our leadership team as well. But irregardless, I can tell you, for Carmen and I, we've had a blast coming over and getting to be a part of this for the last few weeks. And whether this thing merges or whether it stays separate, you'll probably see us at times in here as well. So thank you guys for letting us be a part of it, okay?
I have a little personal request. I don't normally do this for myself. My daughter is expecting twins, and she is having her C-section tomorrow. Please keep that in prayer. This is,
What's your daughter's name?
Kaylee. I have had, I have many grandkids already, but this is a special situation, and if you could just pray that everything comes out well.
Why don't we just pray right now for right? So who wants to come up here and lead us in prayer? Pray for us and dismiss us.
Father, we just give you praise and mercy in all things. We ask, Lord, the special request for Kaylee that, Lord, everything is in your hands, and we just know that whatever the outcome may be, we can praise you in hard seasons, and we can praise you when everything is just wonderful. Father, you know that I came here, just felt led to come here, been church shopping for a while, and I am just so excited by the news I hear. I became a new member, as everyone knows, and just excited for this. And Lord, I feel it's a season, it's a time. Even though I'm an older person, I'm excited about things that I can do that still teachable. And I think a lot of us here feel the same way. We're kind of scared about moving on. But Lord, I know that your plans are much greater than anything we can think or imagine. And the ultimate goal always is to find people that don't know you. And I love the concept of making it hard for this generation to go to hell. Let us all be such a wonderful part of that, Lord. I'm so excited for it. Thank you, thank you. I ask, Father, for the elders of Tomoka and all the leadership there, that this is a transition for everybody, and we just praise you and honor you for this opportunity, if it should come to pass. And Lord, I'm just excited about it. I just claim it. And that's all there is to it. If not, this church is going to disappear. And I know you led me here for a reason, Lord, and I just praise you and thank you for it. Be with us all as we go our separate ways today, Father, and just give us glad and joyous hearts in all things. We praise you. We thank you for the blood of Jesus Christ. In his precious name, I ask all these things. Amen.